Good evening and welcome to this Tete-a-Tete the Opera Festival cockpit broadcast of Rain. This was the first live show of our long run at the cockpit. My name's Bill Banks-Jones, Artistic Director of Tete-a-Tete. I programme the festival. I have a couple of things to say to you before the performance starts. One is how this whole event works. So I'll introduce the video of the performance that we did 2 nights ago here live in the cockpit with a live audience, which is so exciting in this difficult time. Then at the end of the show, I'll introduce our 3 panelists who made the show and were in it, or in it in different ways, you'll see. And then we open the floor to questions. The interaction is through the chat. So if you'd like to ask a question, type your question into the chat room and we'll feed it to the panelists. The other thing to say is first that we kept the ticket price for this very, very low so that you watch the thing, we have the interactive event, and then it's at that point that the artists make their money, because you'll be so purring with delight that you will be drooling to get onto easydonate.org/rain and empty your credit cards into the artists' coffers. It's more than just hardship us artists have had through this year. We've also had a lousy time because we are sustained by what we do as well as by what we eat and drink, and so it has been really brilliant trying to bring all this to life, and all these artists coming with me. They've had a punishing time. The story of Rain is really interesting. We'll talk about it more afterwards, but the show has kind of had to turn inside out to become COVID friendly. It began 2 years ago in Antwerp as a piece with piano, soprano, string ensemble and an actor, and you'll see it's very, very different now. So you should watch it with some indulgence for the performers, because what they've been through to get to this point is huge, but also inspiringly creative. It's been difficult but deeply inspiring. The other thing to say is that Tete-a-Tete, we're working with the Paul Hamlyn Foundation after our DCMS pilot on how to bring theatre back to live performance. So it's really important for us that through all aspects of this work we get your feedback. So you will be sent after this a questionnaire, and we'd really appreciate it if you filled it in. It's a bit more than just what did you think, it's how we can help get theatre back on its feet. Anyway, without further ado, let's hand you over to Rain.
Do you remember how stupid we were? By bus? The tube's quicker. Yes, of course we have to be quick. I've booked a table at Rules. Well, it's where we always used to go.
18th of January, 1946. I was having lunch with him and my bus got held up in traffic and I was 10 minutes late. I felt the fear for a moment I always felt in the old days, that something would happen to spoil the day, that he would be angry with me.
Yes. I noticed that we had attracted the attention of a small man with a big moustache and fawn-like eyes, sitting on a sofa not far off. I tried to outstare him, and that was easy. He looked hurriedly away. His elbow caught his glass of beer and spun it onto the floor, so that he was overcome with confusion. The little boy sitting next to him blushed scarlet. Well, of course, you have to lunch wherever you like.
12th of June, 1944. Sometimes I get so tired of convincing him that I love him and shall love him forever. He pounces on my words like a barrister and twists them. I know he's afraid of that desert which would be around him if our love were to end, but he can't realise that I feel exactly the same. What he says aloud, I say to myself silently and write it here.
Well, it was never really your restaurant, was it? Yes, of course, it's convenient for me. At least 2 or 3 times a week. All right, let's go. Oh, hello, sir. It's been so long we thought you'd forgotten about us. I was afraid you were going to say that.
If I stopped loving him, I would cease to believe in his love.
Oh, well, I lunch upstairs nowadays.
If I loved God, then I would believe in his love for me. It's not enough to need it.
Yes, and you too. It's been a very long time, but I remember it was a big lager you used to like. You've got an excellent memory, Alfred.
All day he was sweet. Only once, when a man's name was mentioned, I saw his eyes move away. I was having lunch with him for the first time for 2 years. I had telephoned and asked him to meet me. And my bus got held up in traffic and I was 10 minutes late.
Richard Smythe, 16 Cedar Road, 4 to 6 daily for private advice. Anyone welcome. 17th of June 1944. While I waited for him yesterday, there were speakers on the common. The ILP and the Communist Party, the man who just tells jokes, and a man attacking Christianity. The Rationalist Society of South London. He would have been good-looking if it hadn't been for the spots which covered one cheek. I stayed and listened for a few minutes. He was arguing against the arguments for a God. 10th of July 1944. The speakers were there again, as they were in June, and the man with the spots was still attacking Christianity and nobody cared. A woman with grey hair distributed little cards on which his name was printed, Richard Smythe, and his address in Cedar Road. Some people refused to take them, others dropped them or on the grass. It seemed very sad. The cards dropped like offers of friendship turned down. 10th of September 1945. Miss Smythe made tea, and after tea she went and left me alone with her brother. I said, "Will you tell me why you are so certain there isn't a God?"
You've listened to me speaking on the coin.
Yes?
What church have you been brought up in?
None.
So you aren't a Christian?
I may have been christened. It's a social convention, isn't it?
Well, if you haven't any faith, why would you want my help?
Food interrupted our dreary small talk, and only when we had finished the meal did she give any indication as to why she was here. Your husband.
He thinks I still sleep with other men. And if I did, would it matter so much? If sometimes he has a woman, do I complain? He is jealous of the past and the present and the future.
Why, strange, I didn't notice anything wrong. Lonely? With you?
23rd of July, 1944 to the 30th of July, 1944. I want men to admire me, but that's a trick you learn at school. A movement of the eyes, a tone of voice, a touch of the hand on the shoulder or the head. If they think you admire them, they will admire you because of your good taste. And when they admire you, you have an illusion for a moment that there is something to admire. All my life I've tried to live in that illusion, a soothing drug that allows me to forget I'm a bitch and fake.
Perhaps he's begun to notice you when you aren't there. Well, that's a nasty cuff. A new one, yes. Well, it was a struggle to write it all. Just then, peace coming. A book takes me a year to write. It's too hard work for a veg. And of course, I'm only joking. We're adults. We had it good together. But we knew we had to end at some point. Now, you see, we can meet like friends and talk about your husband. July 1944. Sir William Mallock came to dinner. He was one of Lloyd George's advisors on national insurance. Very old and very important. Wasn't it widows' pensions they were working on when he and I had dinner for the first time and everything started? I had to talk to the chief of the Ministry of Home Security. He was a man called Dunstan. He had a broken nose, and his battered face looked like a potter's error. All he would do was smile. I had a sense that I had only to make a move, and he would reply to it. I wondered, why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I? I can't be alone for the rest of my life with a husband like mine. Nobody admiring me. Nobody excited by me. 15th of July 1944. Had lunch with Dunstan at the Jardin des Gourmets. He said, 21st of July 1944. Had drinks with Dunstan at home. At home. While he waited for... All went on to 22nd of July 1944. Had dinner with D. Dinner with D. He came home afterwards for another drink, but it didn't work. It didn't work. I paid the bill and we went out. And 20 yards down the road was the grating in the doorway. I stopped on the pavement and said, I suppose you're going to the Strand. Well, I'm going to the Strand. Yes. You should really have that cuff checked. (23rd of July 1944 to 30th of July 1944). Civil defence in southern England. Conferences with chief wardens and borough engineers. Blast problems. Deep shelter problems. The problem of pretending to be alive. In a new reinforced shelter at Bigwell-on-Sea, the chief warden kissed me. They'd gone ahead into the second chamber with the mayor and the engineer, and I stopped the warden, touching his arm and asking him a question about the steel bunks, something stupid about why there weren't any double bunks for the married. I meant him to want to kiss me. Then he looked so astonished that I laughed and kissed him back. But nothing worked. Will it ever work again? I'm sorry, but you have to understand that I'm jealous of everything that moves. I'm jealous of the rain. How can you be jealous of the rain?
June 1944. Yesterday I went home with him, and we did the usual things. I haven't the nerve to put them down, but I'd like to. Because now, when I'm writing, it's already tomorrow, and I'm afraid of getting to the end of yesterday. no attention to the sirens. They didn't matter. We weren't afraid of dying that way. But then the raid went on and on. This was the new thing we had been warned about. He went downstairs to see if there was anyone in the basement. He was afraid about me, and I was afraid about him. I knew something was going to happen. Oh God, you're alive?
You sound disappointed. There's no point in your going yet. There must be an all clear soon.
I've got to go.
2 bombs don't fall in one place.
You hurt.
I've only lost a tooth.
Come here. Let me wash your face. I knelt down on the floor. I was mad to do such a thing. He was dead. Extinct. There wasn't such a thing as a soul. Make me believe. I shut my eyes tight and pressed my nails into the palms of my hands until I could feel nothing but the pain. Let him be alive, and I will believe. Give him a chance. Let him have his happiness. Do this, and I'll believe.
What were you doing on the floor?
Praying
Who to?
to anything that might exist.
It would have been more practical if you came...
Did!
I didn't hear you.
There was nobody there. I couldn't see you until I saw your arm stretching out from under the door. I thought you were dead.
Well, you might have come and tried.
I did. I couldn't lift the door.
I mean, the door wasn't holding me. You could have moved me around,
I
but...
knew for certain you were dead. He hadn't been gone 2 minutes when there was an explosion in the street. His room was at the back, and nothing happened except that the door was sucked open and some plaster fell. I went down the stairs, cluttered with rubbish and broken banisters. I saw his arm coming out from under the door. Touched his hand. I could have sworn it was a dead hand. When 2 people have loved each other, they can't disguise tenderness in a kiss. And wouldn't I have recognised life if there was any of it left in touching his hand? I knew that it would come away, all by itself. Now, of course, I know that this was hysteria. He wasn't dead. Is one responsible for what one promises in hysteria? Or what promises one breaks? I want somebody who'll accept the truth about me and doesn't need protection. If I'm a bitch and fake, is there nobody who will love a bitch and a fake?
Well, there wasn't much to pray for then, was there?
Except a miracle. You're hopeless enough. You can pray for miracles. They happen, don't they? To the poor. And I was poor.
Please, stay until the all clear. Will I see you this afternoon?
No, I can't.
Sometime tomorrow.
My husband's coming back.
Damn your husband! What a summer it was. I remember leaving the hot and crowded room after drinking too much bad sherry and walking across the common with her husband. It was the hour when you make confidences to a stranger. How happy we could all be. Yes?
23rd of July 1944 to the 30th of July 1944. Sweet. I said to God, I've kept my promise for 6 weeks. I can't believe in you. I can't love you. But I've kept my promise. If I don't come alive again, I'm just going to be a slut. Every year I'll be more used. Will you like that better than if I break my promise? I'll be like those women in bars who laugh too much and have 3 men with them, touching them without intimacy. I'm falling in pieces already.
I felt an enormous liking for him, standing there on the common, away from his own party, tears in his eyes. You've got a lovely house. My wife found it.
I said, I won't leave you. I promise. Another promise to keep. And when I had made it, couldn't bear to be with him anymore. He'd won, and I hated him for his victory.
I'd met him only 1 week ago at another party. He was in the Ministry of Pensions in those days, and I'd buttonholed him for the sake of my material. 2 days later came the card. I learned later that it was she who got him to send it. How long have you been married? 10 years. Well, I thought your wife was very charming. Yeah, she's a great help. Anyway, I must go back in. I mustn't leave it all to her.
10th of January 1946. I couldn't stand the house tonight, so I walked out into the rain. I remember the time when I had stuck my nails into my palms, and I didn't know it, but you moved in the pain. I said, let him be alive, not believing in you. And my disbelief made no difference to you. You took it into your love and accepted it like an offering. And tonight, the rain soaked through my coat and my clothes and into my skin. I shivered with the cold. It was for the first time as though I really loved you.
I want him. I want ordinary, corrupt, human love. Well, that's the only thing I can give you. Yes, hello, it's me. Could I speak to her, please? Hello, yes. Is he in? No, sir. Well, could I speak to her then, please? This is, a colleague from the ministry. I know. I know the sound of your voice, don't I? You. I thought. I'm coming to see you.
No. Please, no, listen. I'm in bed. I'm speaking from there now.
All the better.
Don't be a fool. I mean, I'm ill.
Well, then you'll have to see me. What's the matter?
Nothing. Just a bad cold. Listen, please. Don't come. I can't see you.
I love you, and I'm coming.
I won't be there. I'll get up. I'll tell the people not to let anyone in.
Well, she's not got the build of a chucker out, and I would have to be chucked out.
Please. I'm asking of you. I haven't asked anything of you for a very long time.
Except one lunch.
I'm not awfully fit. I just can't see you today. Next week, perhaps.
There've been an awful lot of weeks. I want to see you now, this evening.
Why?
You love me.
How do you know?
Never mind. I wanted to ask you to come away with me.
But I can answer you over the phone just as well. The answer's no.
I can't can't touch you by telephone. My dear, please, promise you won't come. I'm coming. You don't. I swear I'll get up and dress and leave the house unless you promise. This is more important to us than a cold. Please. My husband will come home soon. Let him be. That night was worse than the night when I met him the month before. The sleet, which the rain had now turned into, slashed its way through the buttonholes of my winter coat and bit bitter blessings of hope into the cheeks, into the skin of my cheeks, as I walked across the common. Finally, I thought in euphoria, I have her now. I'd never known her, and I'd never loved her that much. I was back in the territory of trust. The front door opened, and she came out. When I hadn't even made it halfway across the common, that bloody leg of mine. She was in too much of a hurry to see me through the sleet. She turned left and walked rapidly away. She'll need somewhere to sit, I thought, and then I'll have her trapped. She skirted across the common, past the pond and the bookshop, as though she were making for the tube. She ran down the tube stairs, up to the booking office, felt in her pockets, no loose money. Up the stairs again, across the road where the trams run, and I wanted to cry out at her, please, don't worry. There's nothing to fear. We'll both be happy soon. This nightmare is nearly over. And then I lost her. A tram ran in between and she was gone. She might have gone down the High Street or down Park Road, but I couldn't see her anymore. There was an ABC down the High Street, and I tried that. Not there. I remember that little church on the corner of Park Road where she'd been once. Sure enough, there she was sitting in one of the aisles, behind a pillar and a hideous statue of the Virgin. She wasn't praying. Her eyes closed. The room so dark that I could only see her by the candlelight. I could have waited years now that I knew the end of the story. I was cold, wet, and very happy. I even looked with charity at the figure dangling above the altar. She loves us both, I thought. But I know who's going to win this fight. The man, not the image. You see, I can put my hand on her thigh and my mouth on her breast, whereas he was imprisoned behind the altar and couldn't move to plead his cause. And then she started cuffing me, holding her hand pressed against her side. Please, won't you let me be? I will never let you be. What's gotten into you? You weren't like this at all the other day at lunch. I was bitter. I didn't know you loved me. Why do you think I do? That wasn't a good thing to do. No. Please, darling. It's all over now. The waiting, I mean. We can finally be together. We can see each other like lovers usually do. But, darling, love doesn't end because we can't see each other. But I love you. The next day, I had to make great effort to be sensible. In the mornings, I set myself a minimum of 750 words, but usually I managed to get 1,000 done by 11 o'clock. The general's biography that had dragged all through the last year now ran towards its end. She'd normally telephone between 9:30 and noon. He had started to come back home for lunch, and there was no chance of her telephoning again before 3. 8 days it took before the telephone rang again. And it wasn't the time of day which I expected it to be. Hello? Is this? Yes, speaking.
Awful things happened. You ought to know.
Sarah died.
Well, can't tell you what it means to all of us hearing that live applause here in the Cockpit Theatre just a couple of nights ago after such a barren 6 months. Anyway, time to introduce the makers of the show, our panellists. So perhaps you can all make yourselves appear. There's Sarah Foubert. I won't be able to say anybody's name, right? Sarah, who you heard but didn't see. Charles Sobry, I can see, who both adapted the words and performed the role of actor, it says on the programme, and Hans Vercauteren, who wrote the music and brought the project to me a couple of years ago, I think. Anyway, welcome, and thanks so much for an extraordinary performance. I think it would be really interesting for our audience to hear first where it came from, and B, what happened to it. Second, what happened to it as a result of the last 6 months. I don't know who would like to start us off. Maybe it's Hans.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so it's a project that started off quite some years ago. I think the first demos I wrote of the high singing lines for Sarah about 2 years ago when I still studied in London. And back then it was just Sarah, flute, piano, and a little bit of wind and rain. And then we had the opportunity to create this show in Belgium. And then it was written for quite a big force, for, as you mentioned before, for a big string orchestra and a very important piano part played by Stefan van Pernbroek, by the way, who you hear in the recording as well. And yeah, then COVID happened, obviously, and we had to scale down quite a bit. So the original music for strings really changed, as you heard, into sort of an ambiguous atmospheric mood instead of the clear and understandable language of the strings. Yeah, we had to rewrite the whole show, not only musically but also when it comes to the text. We rewrote the whole show and rethought the whole show, and into actually a multi-part show. And this is sort of the first part of the big story that we're going to tell.
The first episode, I realised after introducing it, I got the name completely wrong. It's Rain Sarah, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because there's presumably other rains to come.
Yeah.
Before I pass you over to Charles and just ask you about the actual story, because I think it'd be quite interesting to know a little bit about your character and Sarah's and the other characters that we don't see, actually.
Yeah.
They're also quite interesting. Just say to our audience once more, don't forget to support these guys who have really slogged their something or others off to get this show to you. easydonate.org rain. And if you'd like to, the interaction bit of this broadcast is you typing questions into the chat now. So if you have questions for the panel, go ahead and ask away. Anyway, Charles, tell us a bit more about the story. I'm intrigued about that.
Am I? Can everybody hear me?
Oh yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I was just checking if I wasn't muted. Well, the story is actually loosely based on a Graham Greene novel called The End of the Affair, which was written in 1955. And I think that same year or a bit later, a film was made of the book. And in 1999, I believe, there was another film made with Ralph Fiennes and Julianne Moore. As per usual, the book is less tedious than the film, so it was very interesting for us to have that material at hand. And as you've mentioned before, yeah, it's the story's changed a lot because of COVID restrictions. But it basically deals. I mean, our adaptation of the story, of course. It basically deals with this man called Maurice Bendrix,
Yes,
who
right.
is the writer of in the story he's basically sort of alter ego of Graham Greene, because obviously that story is also based on true facts somehow, and he just falls madly in love with a married woman called Sarah, and he starts she actually starts an affair with him, and they obviously have to they have to make it come to an end, because she doesn't actually want to leave her husband, Henry Miles. He then meets Henry after 2 years after their breakup, after Maurice's and Sarah's breakup. He meets Henry by accident on the common in the rain, and that's how the story starts. It's a case reopened, so to speak, and his love for her just turns into an obsession. He hires a private detective, because actually he hires this private detective because Henry tells him about the fact that he's a bit worried about his his wife and her not being present very often, That's when Bendrix goes, "Ooh, that's weird. Is she sleeping with other men? Would she have been sleeping with other men when we were having the affair?" It's there's a lot of angles to this story, and we've tried to sort of highlight the most important happenings as seen from these different angles, and that's why it's probably going to be turned into a triptych now, because there's three main characters, and in the story you get this repetition of the actual narrative, and it's nice. It's very interesting to see how, according to everybody's view on reality, things actually change, which gives you a bit of an idea of. I mean, the question arose with me, at least. The question arose: is this actually one of them? Must be schizophrenic, and throughout the whole story, this character, this Sarah character, is very, very, very mysterious, very illustrious. So yeah, that's. Sorry, I hope all of that made sense. I'm a bit nervous. I'm actually much more nervous than I was at the live performance.
Doing the performance. Well, I'm not surprised, because I threw an extraordinary question at you. I think what's so interesting about the book is it's much more complicated than any of Graham Greene's other novels, which are all brilliant, but actually very linear and straightforward and easy to take on. Slightly amazingly, we're already slightly up against it with time, but we have to ask Sarah, you are the real victim of COVID in that you never got to connect with your live audience. And I don't know if we can tell our online audience like the whole story of the last 6 months. I mean, we know everybody's had a terrible time and dreadful things have happened. And we've had this bizarrely kind of painful yet inspiring time where you lot have all been so creative in reassessing your pieces. So it's slightly mean of me to ask you, Sarah, because you're the person that ended up volunteering to not be there. But what happened to this piece in the last 6 months? How did it turn inside out and change from your story to Bendrix's story?
Well, it originally started with Rain, just the piece Rain, in December in Belgium, which we performed for an audience. We got the opportunity, well, Hans got the opportunity to write it and perform it. And we were originally planning to do that at tete-a-tete. It was a very physical show. I was on stage, which was nice. Singing it live, which was also now seems like a dream a little bit. But and so we were originally going to just transfer that to English because it was originally in Dutch, and do it like that. But then obviously with all the COVID restrictions and the insecurities about whether or not we'll even be allowed to do any sort of performance, we decided to be as restricted as possible just to make sure that we were able to perform it. And obviously, as we all know here in the UK and all over the world really, the big problem is singing with COVID. You get, a lot of air in the air, especially with loud singing, which this definitely required as well. So we decided to let Sarah be distant and to remain in Manchester, which was, like you say, it was so inspiring to see, because you really in Tete-a-Tete created this community of all us makers coming together and talking all these ideas through and kind of connecting with each other. And then that inspired us to then have our own Zoom meetings, which we were having every week, and then see how we could make this work with Sarah not actually being on stage. So we obviously did a lot of recording. So all of it was recorded in a little back room in my house.
with like a random microphone, which I use for teaching as well. So that was interesting. And then Hans just made it sound beautiful. His music is absolutely stunning to sing, and it was heartbreaking to not be able to sing it live and to just not be on stage. Is just, I think all the performers can agree that we just really, really miss performing but in front of an audience.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I
this
was
is
going to say we're so lucky. I mean, you missed out on your luck, and it's very generous of you to somehow hand the show over. I mean, the drama continued right till the day of the performance, didn't it? Because Hans was in Antwerp, which was, we weren't even quite sure whether it was in quarantine when you got here or not, or what, or whether the regulations shifted because of working. We've only got a couple of minutes left, rather shockingly, but it might be nice just to go round each of you and see your 30 second message to the audience, which might be about donating. Hans, what do you have to say?
Well, I have to say, if there are still questions in your mind about the show, then it's perfectly normal. We'll keep making on the other parts. So in the next few years, please come back to the festival, and you can always rewatch the show for I think 28 days.
Yep,
So
you
and
can indeed. And
check
Charles, have you got a goodbye for everybody?
Um, well, I'm just going to second that. If there's any questions, don't ask them now because we have no time anymore. But you can always, I mean, most of the people I see in the room, I'm probably, personally in touch with. And if you want, you'll find me through Sarah or Hans. If there's any questions, I'm always happy to answer them more directly, more personally.
Yeah, or maybe things that you can put into the next bits of the show. If people
Exactly,
have
that would be
ideas,
interesting
that's
as well to
nice.
hear some feedback. Yeah, and
Yeah,
of course, thank you so much for being here and trying your best along with us to distribute theatre again.
well, we did it. And
Yes,
Sarah, do you have a quick message for everyone?
I just wanted to thank everyone for being here. Thank you for having us at Tete a Tete and making this work. We've all worked so hard to kind of do the impossible, really.
Yeah, it's been
And
nuts. It really
it's
has.
been not.
So much zooming, but really so worth it. So just a couple more things to say that I've already said at the beginning, and one is that we'd really appreciate everybody answering our questionnaire, which is part of our work with Paul Hamlin Foundation to get theatre back up and running. And though they're too humble to say it themselves, I'm sure these great artists would appreciate any help you can give via a link which I think might come up in a second, easydonate.org/rain, which will go straight to you guys towards the making of the next bits of Rain, I guess. Anyway, thank you very much. That was a really great evening, and can't wait to see the next bits. Bye.
bye.